welcome everybody to this workshop. I'm going to say a few things about where resources are located in this workshop. I'm going to give you a brief sort of overview of what's going to happen, and then I'm going to launch in. So the first thing I want to do is just sort of alert you to where you'll find the resources. On this slide that you see here, there is a link to this Spyral Notebook, which is essentially the outline of what we're going to cover today. And it's got hot links so that anytime I ask you to try something, it's got the links right there that you can do it. Augustine is going to put the link to this notebook into the chat so you can get at it. The second thing, the second link we've put is a link to the materials which I'm using in today's workshop. So you might want to download those. In particular, you might want to download and look at the BD underscore Spyral underscore training.1 Microsoft Word document, which is this document here. It's actually a hands-on tutorial that covers the same material I'm covering today, but it covers it in a verbose, hands-on, self-study fashion so that if you miss anything that happens, you can go through this hands-on tutorial, learn about Spyral. It covers stuff which I'm sure I'll forget to cover myself, and hopefully it's self-explanatory and you can sort of recover the material or go over it again on your own in preparation for next week. So, to start us off, I want to just mention a few things. This is the first of 3 workshops. This one is just going to introduce Voyant and Spyral. The next one, next Friday, will go into depth onto how to actually create Spyral notebooks. And then the third one, we're hoping that some of you may actually try to build some notebooks of your own. So in the third one, we will be covering materials that we didn't finish in the first 2, but we'll also have some time if any of you want to show your notebooks and get feedback. In general, in each one of these sessions, we're going to try to go for about an hour and then leave plenty of time for questions. I should also mention that the way this is going to work is I'm going to talk and show stuff, and then I'm going to ask you to try something. So when I first show you your first sort of blank Spyral notebook, at a certain point, I'll show you how you can play with it. And then at a certain point, I'll sort of give you all 5 minutes to try it yourself and maybe take a question or two. So that's sort of the order we will go. And then at the end of the session, in the final half hour, we'll have plenty of time for questions because often your questions are probably better at getting at what's going to be covered. I should say that this workshop is fairly advanced. This workshop assumes that you are ready to learn how to do notebook programming. You don't have to be a programmer and you don't have to know how to program in JavaScript, but you will be looking at code and you will be copying code and running code. And so it's a more advanced workshop than simply trying a simple tool like Voyant. I will, however, as I said, give an introduction to Voyant, show how it works, and you guys can go off and play with it on your own. I mentioned the hands-on tutorial. I should also mention that the actual Spyral server, the Voyant and Spyral server, may get slow when you guys are all trying stuff at the same time. So just be patient if it gets slow because this happens with these hands-on workshops. I sort of turn it over to you and then you all press the same button at the same time and everything slows down. I've got a bunch of useful links here. And anyway, as long as you have access to this script, you have access to all the links you need. So I'm going to start off by giving you a little introduction to Voyant. So this is when you go to voyant-tools.org, this is the entry screen that you see. Voyant is a text analysis and visualization environment that runs in your browser. This has the advantage that you don't have to install anything on your own machine. You can play around to your heart's content, and you can't break it. If you break it and you send me an email describing how you broke it, you win a prize because that will help us make it more robust. And the worst thing that can happen is that, we just have to reboot the server. And for that matter, we even have backup servers and stuff like that. So you should think about Voyant and even Spyral as fiddleware. What do I mean by fiddleware? You learn about it by fiddling away. And so you should feel free to try anything, click on anything. So this is the entry screen. And the first thing you have to do is you have to give it some data to analyze. You can do that in a number of ways. You can paste some data into this field. You could type a URL or put 5 URLs, each one on a separate line, and it will go off and get those URLs. If you don't have any ideas for text, you can click the open button, and we have a built-in a couple of texts. This was developed for humanities research, so that's why we have Shakespeare's plays, Austen's novels, and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload a text, which I'll explain a little bit more about the text later on, which is the way most people do it. You've got some text that you've gathered through your research. I'm going to click the upload, and what I have here is a text file of projects in Alberta that got funding in 2020 around supporting immigrant services. So I'm going to click that. It's uploading the text. And this is what I get. This is the default screen. Each one of these panels, so we have about 5 panels here. Each one of these panels shows a different tool. This one over here shows a word cloud. But in the panel, there's actually other tools. I can click terms, which shows me the same words sorted by frequency, the same words in effect that show up in the word cloud. I can click this one and I get a cool sort of network, social network of words that co-occur. Has a more advanced one. In the middle, we have a full text reader. I'll get to that in a second. Then over here, we show the sort of distribution of different words, and I'll show more about that. We have a concordance tools where you can see the words in actual context. And then here we have a sort of summary of this particular corpus. These tools are loosely concatenated. So if I click the word newcomers, you'll notice that now we have in this trends graph, we have only newcomers showing up. And if I click one of these bumps, and this is sort of it's graphing newcomers over 10% segments of the text, it coordinates the keyword in context. And I can actually expand the context and read how the word newcomer is being used. And if I click one of these, it'll actually jump to the full text, which is here in the middle. And this comes from a sort of hermeneutic principle coming out of digital humanities that when you're studying a literary text, you always want to be able to get down to the raw text. You always want to be able to check your inferences from the text analysis against the raw text. We have a whole mess of other tools. If you go here, you can see all sorts of different tools that we have. We have some very advanced text mining tools and stuff like that. But these tools here are the main ones that you can use to explore a collection. I encourage you to spend some time playing around with Voyant. I've got right here the links to the main server. We have a beta server if the main server is down for some reason. And importantly, we have a list of tutorials. We have a full almost textbook, which another one of the students here at the University of Alberta and I have sort of put together. And if you click on these walkthroughs, each walkthrough is a sort of hands-on thing that you can go through, and some of them are more advanced and so on. So you can actually go in a lot of depth playing with that. So that's my quick little tour of Voyant, and I want to stop here for a moment and see if there are any questions. And in particular, maybe people can put questions about Voyant in the chat, and I can sort of demonstrate. If you put a question or two in there, I can try to sort of answer them and demonstrate stuff. There don't seem to be any questions, but I'll give it another moment or two. Augustine, if you see some questions after I sort of start the tutorial, you can maybe answer them on the chat.
Okay.
Okay. Given that there are no questions, we're gonna jump into ah, curious about data privacy. Good question. So when you upload a corpus to Voyant, it gets indexed and the index gets saved on our server. You end up, if you look up here, you end up with a corpus ID, which is long and would be difficult for anybody to find. But the truth is that the corpus is up on our server, and we don't have, and somebody who had that corpus ID could get at it. This allows you to share it with students and so on like that. We do have a feature that allows you before you upload your text, we have a feature that allows you to set a password. So this is a set, before I've actually uploaded any text, I'm clicking on the options. We have a section here called access management. We can give an admin code and we can give an access code. The admin code means that people can see the corpus but can't change it in any way. The access code means they can't even see it unless they've got that code. We also have a feature that allows you to to actually set um, the corpus to be non-consumptive, which means that people can see the statistics, but they can't see the raw text. This is something that we did in support of the Hathy Trust, which makes a bunch of the Google texts available. So that is one way to make sure that it is in some sense private. A second way is this is a little bit more advanced, you can install Voyant on your own machine. And at that point, it's the same Voyant you're seeing here. You still use it through your browser, but you're in effect running a little sort of one-off server. And at that point, anything you do, anything you upload to your own version, will stay on your own machine, so it's completely private. And of course, if you have the resources and have a lab, we can help you set up a server version just for your lab or something like that. So there's different levels of privacy. And I encourage you to get in touch with us and to talk to us about this if you want to double check the privacy. I also encourage you, if you're uploading texts that will be open, especially if you're sharing them with people, to make sure that you have copyright access. You have the permission to use this. Okay, is there another question before I move on? What types of documents work best with Voyant tools? The very best type would be plain text. We actually, even better than plain text for something like interview analyzing, is to have XML, because then you can actually split out the answers to questions and the different interviewees and so on like that. We also handle, and this works very well with interviews, we also handle spreadsheets. So if you imagine each row is a different interviewee and each column is a different question, this you can actually upload to Voyant, and you can specify that you just want to look at the third question, or you just want to look at the fourth interviewee, or something like that, or the third and the fourth question, or something like that. So you can actually narrow in. We do handle PDFs if there is a text behind it. PDFs can both be just simple page images with no text behind. And you know that is the case when you can't actually select any text, or they can have the text behind. And in that case, we can extract it. We can extract stuff from Microsoft Word, CSVs work. And as I said, you can put URLs and we will go off and try to retrieve the data from the website if it allows us to. But if you really want to be sure of your statistics and so on like that, it's a good idea to clean up your data and make sure you have text files or XML or spreadsheets with exactly the text. Good. Maybe just a moment. If there's another question, we try to make it something that you can start that you can start playing and just use it in a sort of exploratory fashion. So sometimes you upload a PDF, you play around with it and so on like that. And if you see something that's interesting, then maybe you might sort of spiral around and iterate on the project and carefully extract the text, get rid of any stuff that you don't want there, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, I'm going to now move on to Spyral itself. So the problem with Voyant is it's a lot of fun. You go clicking all over the place, but it's very hard to keep track of your research results. If you see something interesting, you're always having to export or save that particular panel in some fashion or another. It's very hard to keep a notebook, if you will, of what you're doing. So we've built an extension to Voyant called Spyral or Spiral, and this is a sort of pun. My collaborator, who alas has passed away, he was very fond of puns, and he was a francophone, so he just loved. That's why I tend to call it spiral because that's the way he pronounced it. And the idea is to sort of give the idea is a spiral notebook, if you will. This is a Spiral is a notebook programming environment where the programming language is JavaScript. It is similar to other notebook programming languages. Some of you have perhaps used Jupyter or you use Google's Colab. There are some of you may have even used Wolfram's Mathematica. It's an idea. The notebook programming environment is an idea that was first sort of mooted by Donald Knuth, a very well-known computer scientist in 1984. This idea was mooted, and the idea is that for certain types of data analytics, it's very important that you write out what you think it is that you're doing. In some sense, the comments and the writing is more important than the code. And so it encourages you to write out what you're doing and then put chunks of code that do it and then write out what you think you saw in the results and so on and so on. So that's what I'm going to now show you. So I'm going to go to the Spyral homepage. This is a blank Spyral notebook. This is what you get if you enter voyant-tools.org/Spyral. This notebook has three components. It has some metadata, which is the title of the notebook itself, and in a moment I'll show you more metadata. It has a text cell, and in a moment I'll show you how you can edit the text cell, and then it has a code cell. And there's nothing in the code cell, but in a moment I'll show you different things you can do with a code cell. Up in the upper left are all the various controls for the Spyral notebook itself. The idea is the content here should be something that you can read. So you'll notice that even when you don't see the buttons that control things unless you hover over a cell. The idea being that you can really just read it and see the results and so on. And up here is where the various controls are. So this is the control which, if I was signed into my GitHub account, would allow me to save this notebook if I'd made any changes or save it under a different name, fork it. And by the way, I should say one of the things we're going to ask you all to do between this session and the next is to get a GitHub account, because in the next session, we'll be actually saving notebooks and reopening them and stuff. This time, you're just going to export it to HTML. The next button allows you to create a new Spyral notebook, which would look identical to this. The next one allows you to open a Spyral notebook, to upload an HTML document that is a Spyral notebook and make it interactive. This button here allows you to run all the code blocks. At the moment, we have no code in the code block, so it doesn't make any difference. But if you get a long notebook with a whole mess of different code blocks, it'll sort of go through and run them in sequence. This allows you to view and edit the metadata, which we will do in a second. This gives you a catalog of all sorts of available notebooks. So you can search what other people have done. And this, if I had actually logged into GitHub, would show me all the notebooks I had created. And the last one, which we will be using today, allows you to export, to take a notebook that you've created and save it to your local hard drive as an HTML file, which you can then later re-import if you want. And then finally, we have help, which we'll be learning more about and using in depth in next week's session. So I'm going to now go through these three types of information and show how you can edit them. The first one is the metadata, which you can get at with this little button here or simply by double-clicking the title. So here's the metadata. I'm going to put my name as the author. We've got the title. I'm going to sort of change the title, intro, trying Spyral for the first. I've got to learn how to spell here for the first time. We can enter keywords. We can make this visible to other people, which I don't want to do. I can write a little description. I will fill in later. We can, if we're sharing this with other people, we can give it a license and sort of tell them under what the conditions are for them to use our notebook, and we can specify the language. We do actually have other languages. Voyant has language skins, and we save this now, and you'll notice that now this upper cell up here now has a different title and has my name. You can have one and only one of these metadata cells at the top. But text cells and code cells, you can have multiple ones and you can interweave them in different ways. So I am now going to show you how to edit the text cell. So here's a text cell, and the moment you click on it, you notice you get this menu here, which allows you to do things. You've all seen these when you've been playing around. Um, Sorry about that. When you've been playing around with online editors and stuff like that, I can type some text. Yeah, I can select it and make it bold. I can set a different heading level. This is a heading. I can type text to my heart's content. I can make a link. So if I want to make a link, I can create a link. And I can drop tables. I can do all sorts of stuff. I can even, if I want to, get at the raw HTML, which will allow me to put all sorts of beautiful things in using HTML that I've learned in a different workshop. But I generally don't do that. I use the formatting that's available. So that's text cells. Code cells are a little bit more complex, and a lot of what we're going to be covering is what you can put in the code cells, because those are going to be that's where the data analytics is going to happen. And one of the cool things about Spyral is instead of having to learn JavaScript, you can export from Voyant the JavaScript that you need to get the results panels that you found interesting. So you can simply by cutting and pasting, you can build up your notebook playing around in Voyant, and that's what we're going to do today. But this being a code cell, I can type an expression like 5 plus 7. So this is an expression, and if I run it, that's what this little run button here, Spyral will evaluate that expression and give me an output. I could write a different type of expression. Some of you are probably used to the idea of the first time you play with programming, you want to write something that says hello world. So this expression basically says take this text and put it into the output. In about 10 minutes or so, you're going to see how we can write expressions which will put interactive Voyant panels into the output, which is, of course, what we really want to do. So I've got the text cells, the code cells. Now let's look at the things that you can do with these, not inside, but you can do to these. So over here, when I roll over a cell, it's got a little plus button. So I can click that and I could add a second text cell. I could click that and add a code cell. I can delete a cell. So if I go to this one and click the garbage can, it asks me if I'm sure. I say yes. I can click here and I can move it. So I can move the cell down one. It now rearranges them. I can do the same thing here, move it down one. When I go over the code cells, I have slightly more controls. I have that play button, which allows me to run the code, evaluate the expression. And when I go here, I can run all of them, or I can run all the cells up to here, or all of this cell and the ones down. I can collapse the editor if I want to collapse the code and not see it in my notebook. And something that can be very powerful but is more advanced, I can actually have different types of code cells. I can, for example, put XML straight into a cell and edit it. I can edit HTML if I want, JSON. I can load a file, and I can load a corpus that I've created somewhere else. And that's more advanced stuff that we'll talk about in another session. So we've got these three types of cells and the ability to edit them and to play around. So at this point, what I want you to do is to try that yourself. So right here, I want you to go to Voyant Tools / Spyral. I want you to try editing the text cell, editing the code cell, adding some new cells, moving them around, and deleting them. So I'm going to give you all about 5 minutes and take it away. And I'm happy to answer any questions people have while you're playing around. So I'll open up the chat, and if anybody wants to ask questions at this point, go ahead. So I think Augustine has put a link in for those of you who want to install Voyant and Spyral locally. He's put a link to how to set up Docker and to do that. For those of you who've joined recently, he's also created a link to the folder where the materials are. And so I see a question here of how can I share my project with others so it will run? So if you look at it, if you look at any Spyral notebook, we're great believers in sort of openness. So this Spyral notebook right here, it doesn't have any code cells, but in a moment I'll be showing you some notebooks that do have code cells. You can share that URL and anyone can run the code and play with it. The only thing they can't do, they can even edit the text cells and the code cells to their heart's content. They just cannot overwrite my version of it. If they click save, they have to have their own account and they have to do, in effect, a save as under their own account name. So this is very much the spirit of this is openness. You're trying to write a research notebook to share your ideas with other people. You can, as Augustine points out, you can also download an HTML page that has all the built-in JSON, and you can send that to someone. They could open it up in Spyral and also play with it. But these notebooks are um, they're fully shareable. Other questions? That was a good one, Nefu Abraham. So I'm going to give everyone a couple more minutes. Play around. Play around with Voyant if you want. Here is a corpus, a Voyant corpus that you can play around with. I'm going to be showing this and talking about this. Can we upload multiple documents, let's say 30 or 50 books, or researches over a 20-year period and see the word frequencies and patterns? Yes. That's I'm gonna go to Voyant and I'm gonna show you. I'm just gonna open one of the indices already built in. So this is Austen's novels. So we have here a bunch of different Austen's novels. Um, if I look at the documents, we have 8 different novels, and because we named the documents, so we had a text file for each one of these documents, we named it with the year. This puts it in chronological order. So if I want to just look at how Austen uses the word um, friend, we're now looking at how she uses the word friend over the novels chronologically. So you can use this if you have a bunch of documents, as long as you name them with the year or the date first in some fashion, it'll organize them chronologically, and you can then graph the results chronologically. I should say that Voyant is not meant to do the type of social science research where you might have 10,000 tweets. It's optimized, if you will, for literary and historical, philosophical communications research, where you might have a corpus of 100 texts, but they tend to be longer and more complicated texts rather than 1,000 abstracts, 10,000 tweets, or something like that. I have and we also, because this is a server coming from Canada's Advanced Computing Research, there's to some extent a limit on the size of your corpus. I have been able to upload and index about 100 megabytes worth of text, but that takes a while and things slow down quite significantly. And when you start getting over that, when you get over 10 megabytes of text, and mind you, text is very efficient, certain tools begin to slow down, especially the compute-intensive statistical tools. We have topic modeling, we have principal component analysis. Some of those tools start slowing down. So, uh, I asked Dr. Fetanola about a concern that relates to the populations with whom I conduct research from a safety perspective regarding sensitive data, particularly vulnerable by wouldn't it be better to use the desktop version? Absolutely. You want to download it, run it on your own machine. My understanding is that the hosted version is not recommended. As I said, you can put a password, but it is always safer to be running it on your own machine. And I will make sure that we post our email addresses. You can get in touch with Augustine. He can point you to the documentation we have and help you install the Docker version. And then it'll run just on your machine. Uh, and he's absolutely right. He recommends you run that. So answering the previous question, 30 to 50 books is fine. 20-year period is fine too. You just have to organize your corpus and give it the right titles and put it in sort of chronological order, and then you can look at stuff over that time. Any other questions? If not, I'm going to go on to the next section. So, um, first of all, I want to show you a corpus that I put together that is close to bridging divides. It's based on immigration settlement materials. I'm going to talk a little bit about this corpus, and then I'm going to let you play with it. So I'm going to show it to you in Voyant. This is the corpus here. This corpus was basically drawn from a spreadsheet of all the successful applications to the federal government in 2020 for funding to build settlement resources. I'm going to show you where it came from. If I didn't, let me just move this aside. So this is where we got it. This is the complete list of IRCC SDI funded projects for 2020. This is open. We've got a list of service. They share a list of the service delivery improvements projects in English and French, an Excel spreadsheet. Here is the English sheet of the Excel spreadsheet, and what you can see is it's got the name of the organization, the name of the project, and then it's got some text, and then it has the province. And there are a total of about 77 of these. I've chosen this because it is immigration related, so it's relevant to the Bridging Divides group, which is hosting this seminar. It's also a fairly small collection. It's only 77 pages, if you will, of text. And I can illustrate something that Voyant can do, which is we can group by a column. In this case, we're going to group by province. So what we've done is I've uploaded this and I've grouped it. I've told Voyant at the moment of upload to use that fourth column, and to basically take all of the projects from Ontario and group them into one document, all the projects from Alberta, group them into one document. So you can see down here that we essentially have one document for each of the provinces. And you can also see, if you look at the number of words, you can also see that Ontario has 8,000 words. So there's a lot more text about Ontario, BC, 4,000 words, Alberta, 2,100 words, and Quebec, only 154 words. That's because most of the Quebec projects were in the French second sheet, and so I just grabbed the English one in this case. So we've got these different documents here, and for the person who is asking about chronology, you could imagine how if you had a spreadsheet and you had the year in one column, you could actually ask Voyant to group everything by year and then get, a document for each year or each decade or whatever it is. Now, we can explore this spreadsheet. So, for example, I can sort of go, well, newcomers. When I click on newcomers, I see that the relative frequency of the Manitoba, even though there's fewer words in the Manitoba document, there's a higher frequency of the word newcomers. And I can click on that, and then I can see how is some of this, what's being said about newcomers. And it turns out it's Newcomers Employment and Education Services, NEES. So it's the name of an actual group, so it's not maybe that interesting. I'm clicking here on Nova Scotia, and this looks more interesting. So I can basically explore how the word newcomers is being used. I can look at other words: employment, delivery, clients, technology. It looks like the one entry in English from Quebec has the word technology shows up 3 times, which is not a lot, but it's a small amount of text, so the relative frequency is fairly high. So basically, this is a Voyant corpus that I can use to explore the English part of that spreadsheet. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to create a Spyral notebook that can record our explorations. And so I'm going to sort of go through a process and then ask you to sort of replicate that. So I'm going to say, I'm going to find something that I think is interesting. Well, I think actually this word cloud is sort of interesting. So I'm going to go to the export button. When I hover over the upper right of any panel, I get a bunch of buttons. I'm going to go to the export button. I'm going to click on Export View, and you'll see that it gives me the option to create a new Spyral notebook from this tool and data. And this is the really powerful thing. Without learning any JavaScript, I can get that visualization into a notebook. So I click it, And here it is. It creates this notebook. It's got some text. It's got two code cells, and these code cells will be important to understand, but in a second I'll explain them. I'm going to run them. So I run the first one, I run the second one, and now it generates that same word cloud right here. And this word cloud is interactive. I can change the number of terms. I could export the word cloud. It's if I click on a word, it shows me the I've got a mouse over stuff here. Uh, so so it's actually in two lines of code. It's loaded the corpus and it's created it's called a particular tool, in this case the Cyrus tool, the word cloud tool. I'm going to talk a little bit about this code. So the first line, this is something that you have to do in every notebook, but you only have to do it once. You have to load the corpus that you're working with, and this is the corpus ID. How do you get that? Well, you can actually get that because it's the same thing that is in Voyant, but you can also get it simply by exporting to Spyral. And in this case, I am not only loading it, but I'm actually giving it a name. I'm saying my corpus, or I could call it something like Table of Services 2020 corpus. Then in another code cell, I take that named corpus and I say, I want to call a tool, and the name of the tool is Cyrus. And you can imagine it can be quite easy to just take this code and put different tool names in, and you get different tools. And then you run these two things and you get the interactive thing. Now, this being a Spyral notebook, you already know you can sit this and say, this is for my exploration of the list of services 2020. It's a good practice when you're building a notebook like this to actually put some documentation. Where did you get the data from? What are the research questions that you're asking? Where did the data come from? What questions? So I'm sort of sketching out in text what it is I want to do. I can actually add right here, I could add a new text cell. Uh, Now I want to see high frequency words to think about the text. So there you are. I've easily created a Spyral, and I probably want to rename this list of services exploration, and I put my initials. So we've created this, and to some extent, all we have to learn from here on in, once we're comfortable doing this, is we've got to learn how to add more cells, how to add more code cells, how to begin to do more interesting things with the code cells. And of course, a key thing is going to be how to save this so that we can get at it when we want to continue or we can share it with someone. So at this point, I want all of you to try doing that. You can go to the list of services corpus right here. There's a link there. You can play with it. Find something that you find interesting, the word cloud or some other tool that you find interesting, export it to Spyral, edit that a little bit, and play away. If you want to get advanced, those of you who have programming experience, try playing with the code. You might even open the help and see if there's other, if that gives ideas about other parameters and stuff. So take it away. I'm going to give everybody about 5 minutes. Again, I'm going to take questions on the chat. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes. If I've gone too quickly, remember that we have the hands-on document that you can download that walks you through all of this step by step. It covers the same materials I'm covering with pictures and graphics and a scratch and sniff button on every page. No, there's no scratch and sniff. But you can always go over this if I seem to be going too quickly. by using that hands-on. So let's see if there are any questions in the chat. I should mention that Andrew McDonald, who is the programmer behind Voyant and Spyral, is online here to help us and is also answering technical questions. So, Charity, you've raised your hand. Do you want to talk your question or do you want to type it in the chat? If you want to talk it, I think Jessica has to unmute you. Yes, I will show you how to do that. It's a more advanced feature, but I will show you how to do it. First, I'm just trying to give you a quick overview of Voyant and Spial, but remind me, we've left a whole half hour for things, and I will show that. Thank you. So if you if you want to actually talk a question, you have to physically unmute yourself. I'm at the moment, I think I'm the only one who's unmuted, but you're welcome to type questions into the chat or unmute yourself and just ask away. After I finished what I'm covering in this tutorial, we can all just have a more open conversation. That's when I'll show uploading spreadsheets and stuff. Okay, I'm going to give everyone one more minute and then I will launch into showing how you can save stuff. Okay, now, now we're going to look at one way to save your notebook. There are two ways to save the notebook. This is the way you can save it to your local hard drive and send it to people and stuff like that. The other way is the way that you're going to use more often. And just a plug for next week, in order to save it on the server, you have to have a GitHub account. So between this week and next week, we've got links. You have to go to GitHub. You have to get an account because that's what we use to authenticate you. Voyant and Spidal is enough to run. We don't want to be also running a whole authentication system on top of that, so we use GitHub that way. Um, but I should say that your notebooks do not get saved in GitHub. We just use that for authentication. So what I'm going to show now is how you could save a notebook to HTML, what it looks like in a web page if you just open the HTML page, and how to then bring it back in so it's interactive and editable in Spidal. So let me go. Here we are. So this is the notebook that I've just been playing around with. I want to save this to HTML. So I'm going to go up to the export button. I'm going to click Export View. We have a choice here. You can actually export a snippet that you could embed in another web page, but that won't work unless you've actually saved it under GitHub. You can export a bibliographic reference. Again, you have to have it saved on the server for the reference to make sense. But the bibliographic reference is if you want to put it in a paper or something like that. In this case, I'm going to choose the saving it as HTML and it immediately saves it to my downloads. There it is, Spyral 2.html. If I go to my downloads, so there it is, Spyral 2.html. If I double click this, you're going to see what it looks like in a web browser. But remember, this is just a straight HTML page. I've not opened it within the context of Spyral. So I can read it, I can see the code, but I don't get any of the ability to run the code. It can actually embed the interactive Voyant panels. So those are working because Voyant is still working, but I can't edit the code, I can't move things around, I can't do anything with it. So this is good if you want to share a version that people can play with, but they can't edit. If you want to re-edit this, then you need to reopen it from within Spyral. So I'm going to start a new, I'm starting a new, blank Spyral notebook. I'm going to the open button up here. I click that. It asks me to select a notebook file. I go to the downloads. I scroll down. I think it was Spyral 2. Dum 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 dum. And it's S. You can see all the stuff I've downloaded and I haven't thrown out. There we go. Here it is. I click open and now I hit open file. And there we are. We're back. I've got all my little buttons. I can run things. I can edit stuff. Uh, it's now a working Spyral notebook again. So you can see this is one way of saving for next week. And so I encourage you, if you want to continue working with this notebook, I encourage you to save it as an HTML notebook. Or if you happen to be someone who has a GitHub account, now's a good time to log in. And you log in simply by clicking on View Your Account. You'll see it gives me sign in with GitHub. Because I've signed in already, I click on this and it just automatically, there's already a cookie. Now I am actually fully signed in, but then none of this will work for you guys. The ability to click the save button won't work until you have that GitHub account. So if there's anything you want to do between now and next week, it's rush to GitHub and get an account. And GitHub accounts are useful to have anyway because it's a great resource for saving various things and websites and stuff. So now, going back to my thing, I've shown you how you can create a notebook, how you can edit it, how you can save that notebook. I've shown you the saving it to HTML. Next week we're gonna go into more detail on saving it to our server and stuff like that. Um, I'd like you to take a moment now and actually go ahead and save your thing to HTML, open it up and see what the HTML looks like, and then try reopening it from within Spyral. And so I'll give you 5 minutes to do that, and then we'll open it up for questions and talk about what's going to happen in the next tutorials and so on. So take it away. I'm going to open up the chat if anybody wants to, or you can unmute yourself. Augustine has put up some very useful links. We have a Voyant consortium. Voyant is maintained by users for users. And I encourage you to go to the Voyant forum. And if you click on it, you can become a member. It's free. And if you go to the Voyant Consortium website, which Augustine has put up a link to, we have a lot of materials. It's mostly about Voyant. We have a lot of videos. Voyant is used, the last time I checked the Google data, is used by over 200,000 people around the world. Literally every country except for, I think, the Congo and a couple in Afghanistan or something like that. And we have tutorials in different languages. People in Korea, in Iran, all over have created YouTube videos of how they use Voyant and so on. So there's lots of material up there. And if you become a member, then you get our newsletter in which you will hear about new features, new tools that we're adding, and stuff like that. Um, yeah, and of course, the more members we have, the better we look when we try to get funding to keep on supporting Voyant and running workshops like this. So your joining helps us and then helps us so we can help you. So I'm going to give you all another minute or so to download your notebook, look at it in the browser without Speedal, and then try to reopen it, and then we'll start taking questions and talking about more advanced things, and we'll talk about what's going to happen next week. Okay. If you need more time, just pop something in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to move on. Everyone seems okay. I apologize if I sound a little bit stuffed up because I'm getting over a cold. And of course, that's the great thing about Zoom is you can't catch what I have. So, um, first I want to talk about what's going to happen next week. So next week you're going to have gotten your GitHub account, and so then we're going to walk you through various techniques for building a real notebook. You've seen how you can create a notebook using Voyant, and we're going to show you how you can use that, export to Spyral. We're going to show you how you can use that over and over again to build up a notebook, exporting the code, then cutting and pasting it, documenting it, and so on like that. But we're also going to go the next step and show how you can get access, how you can start playing with the code, and you can get access to parameters that allow you to do things in the interactive displays that might not be obvious. And so we'll be showing you how to do the help, more advanced features. We're not going to try to teach you JavaScript. That would be a semester-long course. But the cool thing is that you can probably just pick up enough to be able to edit the JavaScript that is there. You can look ahead if you want. You can click on that link there. You can see a notebook that I built looking at the list of services project. So this one shows a whole mess of different features. Starting with, you'll see this is how I write notebooks. First of all, I document what I'm doing. Where did I get the data from? Where's the Voyant interface if I just want to play around? What project is supporting this? The Bridging Divides project. Then I have a code cell that allows me to load without having to type the code. I can just load the corpus and give it the name my corpus. Then I start looking at my documents. I have the tool that allows me to look at the high frequency words. And then I can start doing queries. So here I'm doing something more advanced and interesting. I'm looking I'm creating a query for the words AI, artificial, and online. And then I'm calling the trends tool and I'm giving it that query and I'm telling it to give me a different type of display. So for each province, I can see, and I've got this organized by province, I can see that Alberta is using the word online a lot in the proposals from Alberta. BC has online and has the word AI. Manitoba has online, and Ontario has online AI and the word artificial because it's probably they've spelled out the full artificial intelligence. Then I'm looking at various different technology words, and I've built up an environment here where I can type in different words. I can keep a list of words, and then the next code cell will search for those words depending on what I type. And then we start getting into more complicated code that will actually organize terms. In this case, it'll organize it'll show me the terms for a particular province. So I can say I just want to narrow in on one of the provinces. I don't want to see the terms for all of them. And then I'm looking at phrases, repeating phrases, and then I get an output of all the different repeating phrases because that can be interesting to look at. So you can see in this notebook, for those of you who have a background in programming and stuff like that, you can see a sort of breadth of things that you can do with it in Voyant, both using in Spyral, using the Voyant features of Voyant, but also using some of the features of JavaScript just to get straight lists of things and so on like that. So that's one thing that you can do between now and next week is just sort of whet your palate because we'll be showing a lot of this stuff. Um, if you want to play around, let me find. If you're someone who has experience with coding, you can always call up the inline help. And if you go for the tools documentation, you can open this and it'll give you code. You can play around with the code. You can see how the parameters work and stuff like that. This is a more advanced feature, but if you know your programming, this is how you can quickly see what are the different things that you can do. So now I'm going to answer Huang's question about how did I load a spreadsheet so that I got things to group. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you that we have a tutorial on this. If you go to the Dialogica set of tutorials on Voyant, we have a tutorial and we have one here called Walkthrough for Managing Corpora with Spreadsheets and XML. And that will, if you download that, it's a Microsoft Word file. Again, it's a hands-on thing. If you're comfortable enough with Voyant, maybe before doing that, you want to check some of the other ones out. But you go through that and we walk through how to do that. I'm going to show you in a moment how to do that, but you can always go back to that tutorial. So I'm going to go back here and I am going to go to the options here. So before I do that, I'm actually going to open the spreadsheet so you can see the spreadsheet. Where do I have it? Bridging Divide Speed Out Tutorial, list of services in English. So we need to look at this. And what we notice is that we have the name of the organization is in column number 1, the name of the project, column number 2, the full text, column number 3, and the name of the province is column number 4. So that's what we need to know. Now I'm going to go back to Voyant, and in the settings, in the options here, I'm going to actually say for tables, first of all, I want each row to be a different document because you can sort of decide that you want columns to be document. I don't have a row of labels, so I'm not going to check that. I'm going to say that the content is going to be in column 3. Remember that? Column 3 here is where the content is. And I want it to group it by column 4. So I've set those options. And I click OK. And now I'm going to upload that spreadsheet. And here's where we all cross our fingers and hope that it works, because whenever you're doing a tutorial like this, things like to sort of choke and not work. Hallelujah, it worked. So, and the way I can check is I go to Documents here, and I see that instead of having 77 different projects, I actually have 8 documents, and they're all organized by the different, they're grouped. So all the Alberta, there's about 10 Alberta projects, and they're all sort of bunched together in one document. Uh, and there you go. Did that answer your question, Huang? Did that make sense, or do you have any questions about that?
Yes.
Feel
Yeah. Thank you.
great. And there are, if any of you are into, if you have very complex data sets, that's when you might use XML, because as Andrew said in the chat, you can actually use XPath. This is a very advanced XPath as a way of querying an XML document that would allow you to do some quite complicated stuff. Um, if you have a date, if you have a date element and stuff like that, you can organize it that way. So now we have 20 minutes for questions. We've designed these things specifically so that we show stuff and then we have lots of time for questions. You can leave if you don't want to go any further, but we have plenty of time, and don't be embarrassed. There's no such thing as a stupid question. I've covered a lot of material very quickly. Don't be at all embarrassed if there's something you didn't get. Obviously, I'm such a brilliant instructor that none of you have questions, which can't be true. Okay, so would you please show how to save a notebook as a link to add on a research paper? So this is something you have to, I'm just going to minimize the chat a second so I've got room here. So if I'm looking at a notebook that I've actually saved, remember I have an account. If I click this, I can see a list. This is a list of all the notebooks I've created. Obviously, it's a lot longer than your list is going to be. Uh, when I've saved the notebook, you'll see up here the notebook is saved Geoffrey Rockwell at GH for GitHub. And then I gave it a name, IRCC Projects. This link up here is what you could give someone else. Or I could put it into a different notebook, or I could put it into an email or whatever. So I can put this, there's that link. I'm gonna copy it. I'm making it a link. Now, if somebody clicks on this, it will open the list of services. So you need to get the GitHub account. Then you can save your Spyral notebooks on the server, and then you can send anyone the link and they can get at it. And all of you, if you play around with this, you'll find you can edit it to your heart's content. You can run all the cells. You can edit the cells and run them. The one thing you can't do is overwrite my notebook. So even if you have a GitHub account, you're not going to be able to save it. You're going to have to save as. You're going to have to create one under your own name. And that's actually a great way. If you see a notebook that is doing what you want, save it under your name and then edit it to get it to do the things that you want it to do. So forking is perfectly legitimate as a way of doing stuff. So good question. I'm going to open up the chat here. Did that actually get at what you were doing? Oh, you wanted to know a link for a research paper. Okay. So again, if I've got this here, I can click export and I could choose to export a bibliographic reference. So here it gives me this reference in different styles. So MLA, Geoffrey Rockwell, list of services, development, blah, blah, blah. It's got the date, and then it gives you the actual URL. So you could drop this into your bibliography. People could link back to the thing. I need to give you one. I need to give you one warning. So uh, the Voyant server, we're saving all of these corpora, and we're saving all these notebooks that people all over the world are making. But we need to periodically clear out our hard drive. We have terabytes of disk space. But the result is if there is a corpus, and your notebook is going to need a corpus underneath it of the actual text that you're analyzing. If there's a corpus which has not been touched for over a year or so, we are going to delete them. So we have to periodically clean our thing. There is, if you become a member, you can ask us to tag your corpus as one that should not be deleted because this is something you're publishing about. And we will do that. And that's something that, and then if you put it, if you share this with students or share it in a research paper, then the corpus will not be deleted. I need to also warn you that this is, of course, a research project that is supported by various grants, and we're very thankful to Bridging Divides, which is supporting it. But Compute Canada could disappear one day, and we're all running on Compute Canada, and your stuff could disappear. So there are things out of our control. I could get, I could decide that I was going to move to a very warm climate other than Edmonton and give up on doing anything whatsoever, and that might change things too. So you should always make sure that you keep the original texts and that you download an HTML version of a notebook or something like that, so you've got the stuff yourself. In the unlikely case that our server disappears, or the people involved decide to move on to warmer climates and never touch programming again. While I'm on the subject of bridging divides, I'd like to, of course, thank my colleagues, Yasmin Abu-Laban, all the graduate students like Ayushi who have been helping build Voyant and Spyral, Augustine. And if any of you are bridging divides projects that are interested in using Spyral for your own work, we can, of course, Augustine or myself or others, we're happy to set up a one-on-one and walk through what you're trying to do and show you how to improve it or whatever. So we're supported by Bridging Divides to support you. So don't feel that this is we're going out of our way. We get generous support from Bridging Divides to help you. So feel free to take advantage of that. Are there any other questions? What were the changes made before uploading the spreadsheet? Okay, good one. Uh, The main change was really that the original spreadsheet had two sheets, one in English and one in French. And I just sort of took the English one and turned that into a separate spreadsheet, because I didn't want to confuse Voyant with the two sheets. Okay, where did I put that? Chat, here we go. It is, however, a good idea to always go in and check your spreadsheets. Make sure spreadsheets can be a great way to save chunks of text, tweets, interviews, or something like that. But each cell can only save, I think Excel can only save about 32K. So you're not going to put novels into that. And it can get sort of awkward. If you had large amounts of text, it gets sort of awkward. Jessica has pointed out that there will be a recording of this tutorial available on the YouTube page if you want to listen to me over and over again. Other questions? As Augustine pointed out, the main thing I did with the spreadsheet was not a change to the spreadsheet, but in Voyant, I set the options up. Um, I set the options up. Here's the entry screen. I went over to the options and I went to tables and I set this up so that when it brings in the spreadsheet, it would grab the content to analyze, would it would take from the third column and it would group it by the fourth column. And this can be very powerful. You can, if you have 1,000 tweets, you can make sure that there's a column by day or week or whatever like that. You can group by week. So instead of having 1,000 documents, if you're working with, a year, you have 52 documents, one for each week, which can be much more manageable if you're trying to sort of track how discourse has changed and stuff like that. So we've ended the content for this session. If nobody has any questions, um, we will end the recording and give you some free time, 10 minutes of free time. And feel free to talk questions too. You can unmute yourself. I'm going to put my email in the, there's my email. And remember, next week, get your GitHub account, and then it's really going to sing. Next week is when it's all going to come together. So last call for questions, and then I think we will call it a day. I see some participants. Augustine, do you have any thoughts or questions that you'd like to add?
Nothing. Thank you.
No. Huang, do you have more questions?
No, I'm good for now. Thank you.
Great. Jessica, any last thoughts?
Nothing for me. Just thank you so much, Geoffrey. And yeah, we're looking forward to session 2 next week. So I hope you all, anyone who's remaining in the call, you all join next week as well.
Great. I would say we've come to the end now, and you can stop the recording, and
Sure.
we'll call it a day. So over and out. Goodbye to everybody, and see you next week. I'm going to stop sharing.